right, people. One of the biggest mistakes Westerners made was to think that mosques are just like any other place of worship, just like churches or synagogues or Hindu or Sikh temples. But mosques have proven to be somewhat different from other religions' places of worship. There's no other country better than the UK to look into this phenomenon of political Islam or how mosques are used to advance Islamic causes. Because in the UK, mosques are used to advance Islamic causes. In some cases, mosques even store weapons for Muslim men who are ready to take up arms against mainstream British society. Have a look at this. This happened right after the Southport riots, when some British people were angry about the influx of people from third world countries killing and British children and girls and women. So they came out on the streets and it turned into riots. Muslims also came out, but they came out with weapons. Have a look at this. The UK is so broken that the police officer who was sent to control angry Muslim mobs was also a Muslim. And have a listen to what he had to tell his Muslim brothers.
If there's any weapons or anything like that, what I would do is discard them in the mosque.
Did you hear that? If there are any weapons, which we knew they had weapons because it was even captured on Sky News, he said, if there are any weapons on you, please discard them in the mosque.
Weapons or anything like that, what I would do is discard them in the mosque. And you don't give anybody any reason or have any interaction with the police, negative interaction. That's my belief. If there's any weapons, get rid of them. You're not going to arrest anybody. I think that will go.
We're not going to arrest anybody. Please discard those weapons. So now only a world-class fool would think that mosques are just any other place of worship. They're not. Mosques are central bases of operations for Islamists. And we have seen how there are literally thousands of mosques in the UK. They're spreading their tentacles all over the UK, including the countryside. And the locals are not happy about it. Have a look at this. I just read this now. Fury as pretty little UK village's 600-year-old church transformed to look like a mosque. There are over 50 mosques in Yorkshire and about 1,700 in the UK as a whole. Nearly all of them opened in the last 50 years. So I told you whatever is happening in the UK is going to end up happening in Australia. So now I'm going to say it's not going to end up happening in Australia. It is already happening in Australia. Have a look at this. Bendigo is a tiny little Victorian city, about 2.5 hours out of Melbourne. And look what's happening there. Look at this. Controversial mosque opens after a decade of heated opposition. So for the longest time, the people of Bendigo have been opposing the construction of this mosque. And guess what? Labour government gave them $500,000 of your taxpayer money to build this abomination. As always, Premier Jacinta Allen, Labour MPs Marie Edwards and Lisa Chesters, and Mayor Thomas Prince attended the opening ceremony of the Bendigo Islamic Community Centre on Friday, although some sections of the facility are still under construction. A group of residents then lost legal challenges in the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal and Court of Appeal in 2015, and finally at the High Court in 2016. And construction began in 2019 with the help of, $400,000 in funding from then Premier Dan Andrews. Oh, sorry, well, I was right. It is $500,000. In 2022, the mosque received another $100,000 in federal taxpayer funds from the Albanese Labour government as part of an election campaign promise to help the Islamic Centre reach completion. Why are my tax dollars going to this when the locals don't want this eyesore to happen? It's actually not that difficult to understand why Muslims are so successful in imposing their will on the rest of us when we don't even want it to happen. Why? Because of one magic word, Islamophobia. We have people like this. Look at this. Pakistan Senator, Green Senator, Mehreen Faruqi, who is currently visiting her city, Lahore, Pakistan. That's where I was born and raised. She's more loyal to Pakistan than she is to Australia. So let's have a listen to what she has to say about Islamophobia. This is how they gaslight you. This is how they guilt trip you and sneakily creep up on you. If the current trend continues for another 5 to 10 years, we will have race riots, we will have sectarian violence, we will have religious violence here in Australia just like it is about to go off in the UK. That's why I keep telling you, just look at the UK. They did that 20 years ago in the UK. This Islamophobia narrative to gaslight you. Have a listen to her.
Well, the government hasn't done anything about Islamophobia. And when I say the government, I talk about this government and I talk about successive governments. As the envoy was saying, over 25 years, we've had the Cronulla riots. We've had an Australian man kill 51 Muslims in a mosque in Christchurch. And really, nothing has changed for the community here.
You see that? You just mentioned one very odd terrorist attack where a white supremacist killed 51 Muslims in Christchurch. There's nothing like that anywhere in the world. And she said Australian man. It didn't happen in Australia. But see, she didn't mention anything about what her brothers in faith have done. Man Monis, Naveed Akram, a subcontinental Muslim, Indian parents. And she mentioned Cronulla riots. Cronulla riots happened after some Muslims harassed an Aussie girl at a beach. That's what triggered the Cronulla riots. You didn't mention that. They will keep gaslighting you guys. They will keep guilt tripping you. I think the point has come when you say, you know what? Call me racist, call me a bigot. I don't care. And they know that. They know it's not working anymore. They know that people don't care about these labels anymore, which is a reason why One Nation is rising. This Pakistani senator does not like One Nation.
Over the last 2 years, we have actually seen a massive rise. I mean, there are figures quoted in the report, 150% to 200% rise from 2023 to 2024 in Islamophobia.
Why is that? Muslims love to pose this question to the Jews, that why is it that wherever you go, people end up massacring you?
If the West feels so sorry for the Israeli Zionists, why don't they give a place in Germany? Why don't you go to Hitler's back garden and make an occupation there? Then they will know what kind of people these are. Why every so many hundred years the Zionists get slaughtered? Because Hitler knew how to deal with these people. They probably made a program so they can create a state of Israel in the expense of Palestinian Muslims' blood.
They're implying that there must be something wrong with the Jews. That's why wherever they go, whether that's Russia or Germany, they are massacred. It's because of the content of their character. That's what they're implying. I obviously don't believe in that. I think that's what happens when people are stateless. It's easy to pin a blame on stateless people because they can't go anywhere. That's the explanation for Jewish pogroms. However, Muslims have 55 countries, but they still leave those countries behind and they come to Western countries. And then they turn those Western countries into the countries they left behind. And then they still cry about Islamophobia. It's true that there is no other people who are as, what's the right word without getting flagged? So I don't want to blame Muslims per se, okay? It's just that Muslims bring in their own set of ideas, their own set of values. And those values, unfortunately, are not compatible with Western values. They're just not. What do you want the West to do? Just to keep gambling its future, hoping that one day these people will find some common values and they will integrate? No. Time and time again, we have seen the more Muslims you import, the more your way of life erodes. It's just the way it is. It's just a fact of life. And you are basically asking the Westerners to not protest at the erosion of their way of life. Their way of life is being replaced with a foreign way of life, which I'm sorry to say, a lot of people have a problem with. A lot of people don't want their way of life to change to the Islamic way of life.
And on top of that, a rise in anti-Arab and anti-Palestinian sentiment. And
it might have something to do with you people jumping up and down, blocking streets, praying, screaming, shouting, protesting every weekend over an issue that's got nothing to do with Australia. It might have something to do with that. You know what, guys? Let me say something very clearly. Actually, you know what? Let's just finish her.
nothing has been done. In fact,
fuck her. In fact, we're not interested in listening to her. I've been trying to warn the West for a very long time. I says at least since 2018. But my warnings suddenly became amplified after the behavior of Muslims in Western countries after October 7, 2023. Up until that point, most people would look the other way because their lives were fine. Some were concerned about COVID lockdowns, and people were coming out of COVID lockdowns, so people were trying to restart their lives. And people, until that point, did not really care much about the Islamic threat. I debated with people like Daniel Hakikachu and so many Muslims. I debated with them. I debunked their arguments. And I was like, guys, how come ordinary Westerners are not being alarmed by what these people are openly and boastfully saying? These people were openly defending child marriage. And I was like, surely some John, some Bill is going to say, no, we don't want that. But people were not interested at that point. But then October 7th happened. And then we saw a sudden shift in people's attitudes, because people were all of a sudden were like, what the hell? Of course, not everyone did, because there is a human element to it. And Muslims played that card really well by filling your timeline with propaganda videos. And some were real videos too. Obviously, nobody wants to see blown up women and children or human beings. Nobody wants to see that. But the Muslims use that to their perfect advantage. Their propaganda, their talking points affected a lot of Westerners as well. Most of them happen to be far left, tree-hugging wokes. But the vast majority, or the sane people, were like, yeah, I don't want to see kids getting blown up, but I also don't want to see these people jumping up and down in front of our public landmarks and praying in streets and shouting and screaming. We don't want that either. So that's why a lot of people suddenly became aware of, oh, Houston, we have a problem. So our lefty governments, I don't know about the Liberals, about the coalition under Angus Taylor, he said it as clearly as any Aussie politician should have said 10 years ago, that people coming in from foreign cultures with different set of values, we should discourage that immigration. That's what he said, more or less. But I don't know if he would actively oppose the construction of more mosques. I don't know if he's going to do that. One Nation will definitely do that. So until One Nation comes to power, we're going to see more and more mosques being built in Australia, all around Australia, because mosques are their central hubs. That's the base of operations. It's very important. I've already shown you many times what they teach in those mosques, and that's not going to go away. Mosques and Islamic faith schools, these are the nurseries of future radicals. So we need to not only stop building new ones, but we should also start shutting down the existing ones. We just have to make Australia least attractive for Islamists, okay? That's what we need to do. We don't have to go down the route of the UK. Look, the UK is about to fall apart. It really is. Their academics are now talking about it, that there is going to be some sort of a civil unrest, if not a full-blown civil war in the UK. Why do we have to repeat their mistakes? We're not going to win any brownie points from these people. You can let them build 50 new mosques. Do you think they will stop there? Do you think they will stop gaslighting you? Do you think they will stop crying about, oh, Islamophobia, that white man looked at me like this because my 5-year-old daughter was wearing a full-blown niqab? Yes, you should get those stares from everyone, because that is not normal. That is not in accordance with the Australian way of life. And Australians don't have to apologize for it.